What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to a former Global Force Wrestling Women's Champion, a former Impact Knockout Champion, and a former NWA Women's Champion. She is the one and only Allysin Kay. Allysin, how are you?
I am doing pretty good considering the circumstances. How are you?
Good, good. I mean, it's kind of weird. I'm out here in Los Angeles, and things in California in general are nuts. I mean, if it's not one thing, it's the other. If it's not the COVID, then we've got the protests, and if it's not the protests, we've got the fires. So I mean, it's pro wrestling AF.
Well, that's good to hear because I'm actually coming out there next week for Primetime Live for NWA. So,
Ooh, yes,
ooh,
and yes, and I mean, actually, yesterday I had a fellow Bloodsport and NWA primetime um, a competitor in the Dirty Daddy, Chris Dickinson. So
oh
he
yeah,
was
that's
good
right. He
company.
was on the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So I mean, how do you? I mean, there was so much to cover, right? But how did a young Allysin Kay first become aware of professional wrestling?
Through my father, we used to watch wrestling together. I was very young, so I don't really remember many of the details. I just remember I have that memory of watching with him in the living room. But I actually became obsessed with wrestling when I was a little bit older, at the peak of the Attitude Era. So I'm an Attitude Era baby. My cousin, we started watching WCW, my siblings and I, and then my cousin was like, "No, you need to watch WWF." And then we were right in the middle of the Monday Night Wars, flipping back and forth. Whenever there's a commercial, you'd go to the other channel. And I got to experience that. So that was a good time.
Absolutely. I mean, those were fun times for sure. Were there any particular characters or wrestlers that you became drawn to more so than anything, or was it the entire Attitude Era slash 52 weeks Monday Night War?
I definitely had people that I was drawn to. Um, some people think this is funny, others don't. But my favorite wrestler when I was maybe like 10 or 11 was Road Dogg. And a lot of people are like Stone Cold, The Rock, Sting. Like, yes, those were all, icons in my eyes. But for some reason, Road Dogg was just my favorite. I think it was just because of his charisma. He came out and he danced, and he was always on the mic, and I just thought he was funny. And I don't know. I guess I'm attracted to charisma.
That's no. I mean, Road Dogg. He's one that I mean, he gets lost in the shuffle because, of course, you've got enigmatic personalities like The Rock and Stone Cold and even Vince McMahon. But I mean, this is somebody who, I mean, literally wrapped on the way to the ring. He was, I mean, like charisma to a hilt. I mean, I mean, that whole kind of James family from Bullet Bob, dearly departed, and the rest of the James family, they're just incredible, incredible workers, incredible I mean, just charismatic personalities, and my goodness, it's just incredible.
It might have also been that like preteen thing where you want to like things that not everyone likes. I didn't want to go for like the mainstream Stone Cold Steve Austin. I wanted to find someone more obscure, even though he wasn't obscure. I mean, he was like on Raw every single week. But, at that time, in a 10-year-old's mind, I don't know if that was part of it.
I could be. I mean, that's absolutely true, and I mean, you were so young at that time, so I mean, to kind of put your mindset there and to where you are now, um, I mean, it's an unenviable task. My 10-year-old mind is completely different from today, so there's that. But I mean, obviously, you went from watching it, right, and then training to be a professional wrestler. Where did that jump happen in?
So I actually fell out of wrestling for a little bit during high school. I think just being full time into sports, starting to be interested in boys, stuff like that, got me distracted from pro wrestling, and I kind of fell out for a little bit. So the beginning of like the Diva era, I'm not still familiar with completely. Like people will reference matches that happened or storylines, and I'm like I wasn't really watching during that time, like around 2002, 2003 ish. So I think I was 20 years old, and I was trying to figure out like, what do I want to do with my life type of thing. You know, I hated going to college. I was going to the University of Michigan, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do there. Like I was going because I felt like I had to go. Like it was just something you have to do, but nothing there interested me as far as what would I want to do as a profession. And so I don't really remember what pivotal moment happened where I went, oh my gosh, I need to get back into wrestling. But it just, I guess I was thinking about what did I want to be when I was younger? Like, what have I ever wanted to do? And the only thing I could ever remember wanting to be was a wrestler. So I started looking more into it. I was working at KFC at the time, and I asked one of the cooks there, and I was like, I asked him if he knew lucha libre. I was just curious. I know it's very big in Mexico. He was from Mexico. I wanted to know if he was familiar with it. And lo and behold, he's like, oh yeah, my brother's a wrestler in Detroit. I'm like, what? Of course. And so he linked me up with his brother, who was training at a school called BCWA. A promotion that also had a school, BCWA. And that was pretty much it. I started training to be a wrestler. I met him in a parking lot outside of the Tri-City Trade Center, which no longer is a trade center. It's now like a truck stop in the middle of, it's 3 cities. I forget which ones, probably Detroit, Dearborn, and a third one, which is where Tri-City comes from. So he tells me, I'm going to tell them you're my girlfriend, so they'll let you train here. And this is my first time meeting this guy, okay? And I was like, no, I don't think it's necessary. You can just, tell them I want to train and see if it's cool. Like, I don't know. And he's like, okay. And then he goes in and he tells them that I'm his girlfriend. So like weeks later, after I'm training at this place, some of the guys figured out that I was not his girlfriend, just by observing. And they were like, okay, now it makes sense. Cause we were like, what? Like, how is that his girlfriend or whatever? I don't know, but poor guy. But I was like, please don't tell them that. And he did anyway. Like that was gonna like get me in. I was gonna get in anyway, but
I mean, those are. I know some of my friends that are like involved in combat sports and photography and everything like that, and they have similar kind of iterations. And I mean, it's not too far fetched.
Really, with like lying about being someone's boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, and that to me, because covering both pro wrestling and MMA, it's kind of they're cousins, right? And it's so funny because some pro wrestling fans don't like MMA; they're absolutely adamant about that. Some MMA fans don't like pro wrestling, but pro wrestlers love and train in MMA, and vice versa. It's so funny.
Yeah, definitely. The gym that I train at, there are people that all the time they're like, oh, that was my dream as a kid. I'm like, you can still do it. You have the footwork, you have the grace and the agility to do it.
Absolutely, 100%. Now, I mean, in your early career, because I mean, you accomplished so much I mean, to use a term of the good brothers, you're a tenured young vet. But I mean, what were some of the things that you kind of remember about starting out on pro wrestling independent circuits, either in Michigan or abroad, that spoke out to you that you kind of had incarnations that, hey, I'm going to be something later on down the line, but this may not be it right now.
I don't know if I ever thought that. I don't know if I ever was like, what do you mean? Do you mean like this was going to be my profession or?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I was going in a different direction with that at first. So when I was training, I think it was really when I first sort of branched out onto the indies. So when I was wrestling for BCWA, which is the place that I also trained, I wrestled there for probably over a year, maybe even 2 years before I actually had my first match on the indies. Because BCWA was sort of like it's in its own bubble. We didn't bring people in from the outside very often. It was just kind of like the people who were, the local people or the people who trained there were the ones who were on the show. So my first indie, I have like 2 firsts that I consider. So my very first time outside of BCWA was for Beyond Wrestling, and I wrestled Jefferson Saint, and he basically whooped my ass and he peeled off my eyelashes. So that match, it's on YouTube if you want to watch it. That was my first time outside of BCWA, but it was when Beyond was still like for the boys, so there weren't any fans. It was all wrestlers around the ring. So my first time after that, on an actual indie with fans was AIW, and I wrestled Jessica Havoc. Jessica really took me under her wing. She brought me to WSU, which is an all-female promotion. I believe they started running again before the pandemic, but they had shut down for a while, I believe. And we sort of became like, it was Jessica, Sassy, Steffi, and myself driving from Michigan and Ohio to New Jersey, New York, and we became the Midwest Militia. And it was really there that I feel like I started to find myself as a character and really just realize like this is something I'm in long term.
No, that's, I mean, my goodness, the Midwest Militia. That I remember watching not only on YouTube, but like I still do the PWI, and seeing your exploits across the Midwest, and I'm like, I'm glad that you're speaking about it. I mean, how special was that group to you?
It was very special because it was authentic. It was something that formed because of at the time the promoter was the Mick was his name, and he wanted to build this stable off of what was naturally happening in front of him. So we were traveling together, we were good friends, and he was like, I'm going to put you together in a stable. And I think that that's a great way to do it because you're taking something that's real and you're just amplifying it. So it wasn't like forced, like he just threw together 3 random people.
No, 100%, 100%, which I think kind of leads into a little bit into John McGuire's question. And he's asking, has been your most defining moment in wrestling so far?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Most defining? The first thing that actually popped in my head, I guess, would be my first defining moment that ever happened for me. And that was probably when Mia Yim broke my nose at AIW in 2012, I think, for Girls Night Out 5, if I'm not mistaken. I really feel like that sort of put both of us on the map. It put Girls Night Out on the map for AIW. At least that's what the promoter has told me himself. And so I really think that, especially at the time, there was these pictures across the internet of my nose just exploded, blood everywhere. The next day I posted a picture of my black eyes. It was like a weird happy accident, like where Bob Ross up in his bitch. I don't know, like, but it really, I feel like set the pace. It really started me, set the pace for like the rest of my career, kind of being like, I don't know, a little rough around the edges.
I mean, it's worked. I mean, it served Becky Lynch pretty well, in getting that broken nose. And I mean, it literally charted another course for her career. So I'm glad that those kind of moments kind of happened. And it's not just kind of spoken for the males in MMA and pro wrestling, but, females, like we're us as good, if not better.
I think also the huge thing that sold that whole angle and turned it into a whole feud with Mia Yim, it wasn't just that my nose was broken and exploded everywhere. It was that it happened in the beginning of the match and we finished the match. That was also a huge part of it. I remember I remember just lying on the mat and realizing like because it happened on the outside of the ring. We go to the apron. I look down at the apron. I see blood pouring and I didn't even realize at the time it was coming from me. We roll in the ring. She goes to pin me. She was calling to go home because she was like panicked. And I was like, no. In that like 2 seconds just flashed in my head. I just pictured myself like awkwardly ending the match and like walking to the back, like, and I just could not, like, that was so humiliating. That thought, I was like, I can't, no, we have to finish.
No, absolutely. But I mean, it proved pay dirt because I mean, if you're a combat sports athlete, sometimes you pay in blood. Most times you do. So I think it's an awesome moment, and again, it is on YouTube, so you guys should check it out.
I don't think that match is on YouTube, but the second one is. We had 3 matches for that trilogy.
Okay.
The second one is free on YouTube. I think the other 2 you have to buy.
Oh, okay. So I must have caught one of the second or third ones then.
Probably if it's the fans bring the weapons match and I use a machete, probably. That's
Probably.
the one on
There
YouTube.
you go.
No spoilers.
Um, and Steve Tatum says, Allysin, Allysin, Allysin. So
Okay. Oh wait, if she's saying it in front of a mirror, I'm gonna appear in her house. So I hope not.
dun dun dun. Stephen Tatum wanted to know, in terms of you competing in the Mae Young Classic. I mean, what were some of your fun moments of that tenure of your career?
For the Mae Young Classic?
Yes.
So the Mae Young Classic is very special to me because that was my first match back after being out for almost 7 months, which is coincidental that I've just been out for another 7 months because of the pandemic. But we're not even going to talk about that. So because everyone's talking about that. So in January of, I want to say 2018, I was diagnosed with blood clots in my lungs, which is wild. And especially for being like young and healthy, not a smoker, all that. It was pretty sure it was due to medication I was taking. It can't be proven, otherwise I would sue them. But that's what the doctors say is most likely. So I had blood clots in my lungs and I had to be on blood thinners for 6 months. So I ended up being out of the ring for like 7 or 8 months. And my first match back ended up being the Mae Young Classic. My contract with Impact expired during the time I was injured. Didn't end up re-signing a new one. No hard feelings, just didn't. And the WWE reached out and I was like, that sounds fun. So I did the Mae Young Classic. My first match back was with Mia Yim. So it all comes full circle. And so it was very special to me for that reason. I could not have gotten a better opponent for my first match back. My agent for that match was actually Serena Deeb, who I was supposed to wrestle next week, but now that's going to be postponed to a later date. And it was just I feel like it happened at a great time because I had been out for so long. It was great to come back to that level of, I guess, to that platform, even though it was also very stressful for that reason. But the match ended up going very well. I mean, it didn't go in my favor, but it went very well otherwise. And it was an overall very pleasant experience. Being in that locker room was very pleasant. I think what I mean also by it happening at a great time is that I'm far enough along in this business that I know a lot of people. So going in that locker room, there were very few people that I didn't know. So I felt very welcomed with open arms.
Oh, that's incredible. And that locker room experience, can give birth to, fantastic, matches that take place in the squared circle, and you've had, I mean, quite a few fantastic matches. Obviously you mentioned the one with Mia Yim, but I mean, what are some of your favorite matches that you've competed in?
One of my hands down favorite matches in a long time. Like the first one that pops in my head is my match with Thunder Rosa at Hard Times, NWA Hard Times pay-per-view in January of this year. I mean, we must have done so well that we just sent the world spiraling into hell or something, because that's what happened after we had that match. That was what a lot of people tell me is the best match they've seen me in. Or their favorite match of mine. It was their favorite match of the card. It was their favorite match of NWA. It was their favorite match of the year. We get so much good feedback on that match. It makes me so happy because I really felt at that point, for a variety of reasons, a lot of pressure to perform. And even people in the locker room were saying things that I think they thought were encouraging, but it was really like adding more and more pressure. And I just don't want to disappoint certain people, But at the end of the day, you just have to not think about that and just go out there and do your thing.
No, 100%. And that's one thing that you guys have done. And I mean, obviously Thunder Rosa is representing the NWA and AEW, going to be on Primetime Live. I believe she just, on the latest episode of Primetime Live, she actually competed against Priscilla Kelly.
Yes. Yeah, Priscilla Kelly and Thunder Rosa was last week. Camille and Heather Monroe was the first episode. And then next week I'm facing Nicole Savoy. Was supposed to be Serena Deeb. Now Serena Deeb is later. Nicole Savoy is now, which is also, it ties in. Everything comes full circle because the last Bloodsport, I faced Nicole Savoy.
Absolutely. And I mean, my goodness, I mean, you pretty much called out on Twitter, like, your kind of intention to compete at Bloodsport, right? So uh, come October 11th, this will be your second iteration of competing in Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. I mean, how fantastic is this opportunity, this style of wrestling for you?
It's very exciting. It's interesting how it came about because I just sort of like tweeted out something I thought was funny, but I was serious. I think I said something like, I want to wrestle at Bloodsport so I can butterbean those hoes or butterbean these hoes or something like that. Um, which ended up with the promoter reaching out to me like, "Oh, are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am serious. I do want to come to Bloodsport," and it all worked out. So it's funny because I I'm not the type of person to like tweet out like asking for bookings. You know what I mean? I feel like that's kind of like tacky. But in this case, like a tweet just happened to catch someone's attention and it ended up working out in my favor. So um this I really felt so truly at home with Bloodsport. I really feel like I've been so fortunate. 2019 was a great year for that reason. With between Bloodsport and NWA, I feel like I found my place. Like this is my style, you know. NWA is very old school. Bloodsport is a very just mat based, you know. I'm not necessarily mat based, but more technical and less flashy and bouncing off the ropes because there are no ropes. So I like that. Um, it makes me feel I just feel much more calm for some reason and much more at home when I'm wrestling that style than when I'm trying to work with someone who, you know, wants to flip off everything.
No, 100%. Now, I mean, your first match at Bloodsport was against the Coastal Boy. I mean, theoretically speaking, I mean, the first female match in that setting. What was it like? I mean, obviously, what was this happened over the past WrestleMania weekend in the New York, New Jersey area, the East Coast, and I mean, it was a different setting. I mean, the way that it was just set up with the fans, the no ropes, like kind of explain to us that feeling versus the other promotions and situations that you've found yourself in before.
I was curious how the no ropes would feel. However, it's not the first time I've been in a ring with no ropes. Actually, at Impact, during the wedding that we had between Laurel and Braxton, there were no ropes on that ring. And that was very weird at that time because I remember those fans were so loud during the wedding. It was amazing. It felt like they were in the ring, especially with the no ropes. It was like less of a barrier between us, and it really felt like they were like right there. With Bloodsport, it was the same thing. So I think the main thing, the not even a worry for me, but my concern was more like, are we going to get so into grappling that we just like fly out of there? You know, we don't really have that barrier except for the four posts that are still up. But it really wasn't. I mean, it did happen a couple times in my match with Savoy, where we kind of once you get to the edge of the ring or something like that, you know, they stop it, you get back in the center. I think she like suplexed me out of the ring actually at one point. Maybe it's I don't know out of my brain. Hopefully for let me watch that back and make sure it actually happened. No, I'm pretty sure it did. And yeah, it wasn't difficult. It wasn't difficult to adapt to. So like it's more like with most things in life, the anticipation of something is more nerve-wracking sometimes. But then when you're actually in it and you just like, I don't know, you just shut everything out and you just get to it.
No, absolutely. I mean that you've done that over the course of your career, you know, and I think it's funny because you started out liking Road Dogg, but I mean you've gotten into kind of if you're looking in terms of records, right? You've gotten into the deep cuts where you are being influenced by Mildred Burke and Harley Race and I mean legends of the past that I don't think get their just due in 2020. I mean, I myself have a like Billy Robinson kind of cutout. I'm all about old school. At what point did that kind of change in terms of your influences happen? Like, yeah, pretty much.
I really think when I started to train, my taste started to evolve a little bit. So I started to like, you know, when I started wrestling, I didn't even know there was anything but the WWE. I didn't know there was indie wrestling. When I started training, someone told me about Shimmer, and right after I think my first or second match, like a bunch of us actually went on a road trip to a Shimmer event in Chicago to watch live. I had no idea things like this existed beforehand. So there are some wrestlers that, you know, when I was a kid, I loved. And then when I go back and watch their matches now, I'm like, ooh, you know, I'm like, okay, I was definitely in it for the show aspect of it, not so much. I didn't know what I was watching, you know. I'm in it for the drama and the excitement and whatever. So yeah, so my taste started to evolve a little bit, started to learn a lot more of the background in the business. That started when I started training. That wasn't something that I like, you know, I didn't grow up watching the NWA, for example, but I started to study more old school. Also, my trainer had a huge influence on me because he's very old school as well.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I find myself more and more when I want a wrestling fix, I end up going to like 1970s All Japan, and I get weird with my wrestling. But I mean, this is kind of the reason why I'm so excited for October 11th, because Bloodsport is more of what I want in terms of my North American wrestling.
I totally agree.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Don McGuire, he asks, in terms of reflection, right? When you look in the mirror, what do you see?
That's a really deep question. When I look in the mirror, and now I'm like picturing myself looking in the mirror. I think I see someone who is very determined, someone who's very, I consider myself a tough person. You know, whether you like me or you don't, that's subjective. I can't tell you that. But I do think that I'm tough. And I think that's more of like something that you can't really argue with.
I like it. I think it fits. And who would get it? Who would dare get in an argument with you? I don't think you come out better going into it. I, I wouldn't do it. Now, in terms, I mean, obviously, you have been in a lot of prestigious arenas, and held prestigious championships such as the Impact Knockouts Championship, the Global Force Women's Championship, and the NWA Women's Championship. You are pretty much like a new school take on everything that was awesome about like the 1950s, 60s, and 70s wrestling. Yes, I absolutely. That's what I'm going to say. People can refute me, but what
Or
are
not.
some of like? Does any one championship or championship win stand out more so than others to you?
I mean, that's hard to say because they all are special to me. All like my little children, you know, you can't pick a favorite. No, but I mean, you can't deny the legacy that NWA has, you know, and holding a championship that all of those women in the past held. I mean, I could see the same thing for the Knockouts Championship though. So it is hard. It's hard to really choose. They both have a huge legacy. I will say NWA is a way longer, you know, so maybe I can say technically I have to go with that one. You can't be mad at me.
No, that's a really good deal. I mean, I've got a replica, 10 pounds of gold here. Uh, meeting Harley Race at I think it was like Wrestle Reunion 2011 was probably some of my like outside of my meeting my wife and my child being born. I think it's still up there. That's like top three.
Don't get in trouble now.
Anyway. um, so in terms of places that you've competed in, like physical locations and what have you, are there any arenas that kind of speak out to you in terms of like, damn, like walking into the building and you're like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be special.
Oh man. Right off the top of my head, I remember feeling that way walking into the Crockett Cup, which is where I won the NWA Women's World Championship against Santana Garrett. That was 2019. That the whole just set up, and they had the old school vibe. They had the old school NWA logo on the ring. It just felt energetic. You could just feel the vibe going in there. I also remember feeling that way during a tour in China in 2014. The last stop, we did 4 shows, and our last stop was in Beijing, and it was at the MasterCard Center. And that was in front of, I believe they said 10,000 people. I don't know. Sometimes they fluff these numbers, but that's what I was told. And it was so, like, they had the ring so lit up, and the fans were so, like, shadowed that you couldn't even see, with the lights in your eyes, you couldn't even see the 10,000 people, but you could hear them. And you can absolutely feel that. And just walking into that arena beforehand, like before the fans got in there, and seeing all of the seats, it's a little overwhelming. I think they had like their cheerleaders for, I don't know what sport, but they had some cheerleaders there that were like practicing their whatever they were going to do. They all came out with us. That's what they did during the entrance. There's some screenshot of me somewhere with I'm walking out, and they're like cheerleaders like woo, like next to me. I'm like, okay. But those, I mean, for obvious reasons, felt very big. They were very big.
No, I think, yeah, those are pretty big deals. I think, you know. Now, in terms of October 11th, right? That's coming in a couple weeks, and especially the fact that, I mean, this kind of 2020 year has been throwing people a loop. But how good is it going to be to feel, to want Allysin Kay to get back in that ring, and compete again?
I really cannot wait. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but just having especially these shows in particular, lined up to come back to is great, So with NWA next week, and then Bloodsport on October 11th, Shimmer, I'm also doing Shimmer that same day. So that's going to be a long day for me. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to get back in the ring. Like 3 of my favorite promotions. I feel like I'm very fortunate in that aspect.
I'd say so, and us as fans are absolutely fortunate that we're going to get a triple dose of Allysin Kay in the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, that can cure any kind of situation that you're in. I'm just
I'm not going to argue.
saying. Now, in terms of favorite opponent, and I don't want to single anybody out, but I mean, obviously, I mean, there's been so many that have kind of attributed to your success. So, in terms of favorite opponent, I mean, who's at that top of the list, or I mean, if you have a top 5
Favorite opponent, that's hard. That's really hard. I feel like I definitely have to have Mia Yim in that mix, in top 5, top 3, possibly top 1, because of our history and because of where we started and where we, like, the last match that we had, like everything coming full circle. We've always had great chemistry, and that's what when I think of favorite opponents, I think of the chemistry that we had. And with Mia, we just had that chemistry from the get-go. Besides the accident that broke my nose, after that, everything was great. Like, we just clicked, and I've always just genuinely enjoyed going into those matches. I never felt like dread. Some people, you just know they're going to be difficult, or you know that they're going to be like annoying, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, let's get this over with. But with like people like her, I just always look forward to it, and I just know it's going to be fun. Like, just putting everything together is going to be fun. Who else? I'm trying to think of other people that I just genuinely have always had really good chemistry with. I mean, I can't deny the chemistry that I had with Thunder Rosa either. Hard Times in January was our first singles match together, and we just sort of clicked. And I guess it might very well be because of that MMA style where, I don't know, we just roll with the punches type of thing and are not afraid of hitting hard or getting hit hard. I think that people like that work well together. Those are the 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, I have so many people that I've worked well with and have had fun with. Like, of course, I always love working with Marty Bell. We had a no DQ match NWA in the last season of Power. And it's one of those people that I trust with my life. So, like, going out there, and no matter what happens, even if I want to throw her on a chair at the last second, which may or may not have happened, it's fine.
No, 100%. And I mean, you mentioned the obviously the Crockett Cup and the step, right? So walking into like the Atlanta studios where Power was taped, I mean that had to. I mean, you're a historian of pro wrestling as well as a professional wrestler. How cool is that to actually be in the center of that and as a champion?
It was awesome. I mean, I hate using that word. It's such a generic. It was awesome. Everything's awesome, but it really was like I don't know how else to describe it. It was surreal is a good word to describe it. So looking at the studio, especially when you're standing at the top of the bleachers, it just looks so cool to see the whole because it's like a 3-part setup, right? You have the commentators in the corner, you have the podium in the other corner, the ring in the center. So it's all in the same room, but like on TV or YouTube, whatever, on camera, it looks like it's almost like you're in separate rooms or something like that. And being able to watch it, being able to see it from the top and then also see it from the ring, it's two really cool perspectives. Coming out of that curtain for the first time, I was fortunate enough to start the power tapings as champion. So yeah, it was just a really awesome thing to be a part of.
No, absolutely. And I was so happy when I saw you on there and a litany of others. But I mean, one name in particular, aside from you, is one Dave Marquez, who coincidentally you will be stepping into the United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live
Yes.
next very week. Um, how's it cool? I mean, obviously, there's United Wrestling Network and the NWA have a working partnership. But how's it to kind of work for Dave Marquez again?
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I did championship wrestling from Hollywood once before I faced Heather Monroe. She had a
Yes,
title
for the
shot against
NWA
me.
title.
Yes. So the last time I was out there, I really liked the whole setup there. It's going to be interesting with no fans now, but they have a studio setup as well. The production was it looked great. I like being in those settings, so I am excited to be in that setting again.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, Allysin, again, there have been so many that are instrumental in not just you as a wrestler, but you as a person. Um, that have influenced you. So let's get some shout outs out of the way and literally plug everything that you've got going on.
Oh man, that's a lot. That's a lot to unpack right now. So wait, what was the first part of that? Who am I shouting out?
So, any influences? Shout out to any influences, influential people, or things that have helped you get here.
Oh my gosh, that's something I needed to think about beforehand. There's so many. I feel like I'm like winning an award and I'm at the podium and I have to like pull out my little paper of like I have to thank all these people or they're gonna hate me. Um, oh my gosh, everyone that's ever stepped in a ring with me, I have to thank, right? Because everyone has had a part in shaping me in some way or form, whether it be for better or worse. Sometimes you learn what to do, sometimes you learn what not to do by working with people. So, I mean, all of my opponents and promoters that trusted me and gave me a shot and pushed me, I have to thank them because I wouldn't be here. The fans, I would not be here without the fans, for real, especially during this pandemic. My fans, in particular, my patrons, I have to give a huge shout out to on Patreon. Like, y'all are my ride or dies. Like, you really had my back when like things were very, very uncertain. I mean, the amount of money that people lost during the pandemic, or not even lost, but like now we're planning for, but we're no longer getting, especially those who are planning on going to WrestleMania weekends. I mean, my patrons really have my back in that aspect of during a very uncertain time. So that's something I have to plug as well, is my Patreon. So people confuse what Patreon is. Sometimes people think it's just like an OnlyFans, which if you have an OnlyFans, that's fine too. But Patreon, I'm not exactly sure if OnlyFans is just like nudes or something. I'm not very clear on that. But people think Patreon is that too. It's not. You can make Patreon whatever you want. So like, for example, I do commentary over my old matches. I just did commentary over Beyond Wrestling. I faced Kimberly in 2013 in a wild match where we used like a refrigerator and duct tape and it just got crazy. So I felt like I needed to elaborate on that. So I did commentary. I do photo shoots. I do like personalized video messages. I do a lot of fun stuff, a lot of polls. My patrons help me choose like my next merch designs, all that stuff. So anyway, patreon.com/Allysin Kay. I have my Twitter and my Instagram, which are at Sienna. just Sienna. I'm only not changing them. I feel like I have to explain this every time. I'm only not changing them because they're verified. And there are so many fake accounts out there that keep trying to scam people that I feel like I can't lose that verification right now. So I'm just going to leave it, even though I don't want it to be my handle, but it is what it is. I think, I don't know who else to shout out. I know I'm doing a very vague everyone, but like literally, I mean, you already know it's not everyone. There are definitely people I don't like, but if you, if you know, you know if I'm shouting you out or not when I say everyone, all my opponents.
No, I think that's fair. That's fair. And last but very not least, October 11th is coming up, right? Bloodsport. You've got Shimmer. You've got Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. What can the fans tuning into those shows expect out of one Allysin Kay?
Oh boy, a lot of chaos. A lot of, I don't want to say ridiculousness because that's probably not the right word, but I'm just, you're gonna see someone out there having fun and doing what she loves, which also includes being very violent. So I think that really sums it up.
Absolutely. Well, Allysin, it's been an honor and privilege of having you on. My goodness, I cannot wait. I mean, like my bank account is pretty much like all the things that I've bought on Fight, and a lot of them have you on it. So it's awesome, and I can't wait to see what ends up with you for the next part of 2020 and beyond. So I can't wait. But thank you guys for joining us. That's been Allysin Kay. I'm Reporter Duwith, and if you haven't already done so, like, share, and subscribe to this very channel. But bye.